The Fall of Cyrus the Great, King of Kings, recounted by Herodotus. At the height of Persian expansion, one would look to the west and find that the Caspian Sea was bounded by the Caucasus. But eastwards lies an immense tract of flat country, over which the eye wanders until it is lost in the distance. The greater part of this region is occupied by the Massaget, whom Cyrus wished to attack. There were many things which roused his ambition and gave him courage to undertake this new war, the two most important being his belief in his superhuman origin and the success of all of his previous campaigns. For it was a fact that until then it had been impossible for any nation to escape once he had determined to march against it. The Massaget were peculiar to the Persians in all of their customs. In fact, they were peculiar to most of the peoples that surrounded them. In their dress and their way of living, the Massaget were much more like the Scythians. Some ride, some do not, for they use both infantry and cavalry. They have archers and spearmen, and they are accustomed to carrying the Cyrus or the battle axe. The only metals they use are gold and bronze. Bronze for spearheads, arrow points, and a battle axe, and gold for headgear, belts, and girdles. Similarly, they give their horses bronze breastplates and use gold about the bridle, the bit, and the cheek pieces. Silver and iron are unknown to them, none of it being found in the country, though it produces bronze and gold in unlimited quantities. As to their customs, every man has a wife, but all wives are used promiscuously. The Greeks believe this to be a Scythian custom, but it is not. It belongs to the Massaget. If a man wants a woman, all he has to do is hang his quiver in front of her wagon, and then he can enjoy her without any misgiving. They have only one way of determining the appropriate time to die, namely this. When a man is very old, all of his relatives give a party and include him in the general sacrifice of cattle. Then they boil the flesh and they eat it. This they consider to be the best sort of death. Those who die of disease are not eaten, but they are buried immediately, and it is held as a misfortune not to have lived long enough to be sacrificed. They have no agriculture, but they live on meat and fish only, of which there is an abundant supply in the Araxes. They are milk drinkers, and the only god they worship is the sun, to which they sacrifice horses. The idea behind this is to offer the swiftest of mortal creatures to the swiftest of the gods. It was these people over whom Darius was queen of the Massaget, her husband having since died. Cyrus sent to her and he pretended to sue for her hand in marriage, but he was met with a refusal, for the queen was well aware that he was wooing her not for herself but for her dominions. Cyrus, therefore, having failed to achieve his objective by cunning, turned to open force, and advancing to the Araxes, he began his assault upon the Massaget by bridging the river for his men to cross and constructing upper works on the ferry boats. While these works were still in hand, Darius sent to him a message. "King of the Medes," she said, "I advise you to abandon this enterprise, for you cannot know in the end if it will do you any good. Rule your own people and try to bear the sight of me ruling mine. But of course, you will refuse my advice, as the last thing you wish is for us to live in peace. Listen then carefully. If you are so bent upon trying your strength against the Massaget, give up the laborious task of building that bridge and let my army withdraw for 3 days' march from the river. And then, come over yourself, or if you prefer it, retire the same distance and let us meet you on your side of the river." When he heard the queen's message, Cyrus called a meeting of his chief officers and laid the question before them, to get their opinions on which course to adopt. Every one of them voted to let Darius and her army cross to their side. There was, however, one dissenter, Croesus, the Lydian, who had attended the meeting of Persian officers and put forward a quite different view. "My lord," Croesus said, "I have already told you that since God has made me your servant, I will do all that I can to avert any danger which I see threatening your house, and I have learnt much from your own cruel misfortunes. Doubtless, if you think that you and your men are immortal, there is little point in me telling you my opinion. But if you recognize the fact that both you and the troops under your command are merely human, then the first thing I would tell you is that human life is like a revolving wheel, and never allows the same people to continue long on top. My view of the question you are discussing is the opposite of what all these others have expressed. In my opinion, if we allow the enemy to come over to this side of the river, the danger will be that in the event of defeat, you may lose not only the battle, but your entire empire as well. For obviously, the Massaget, if they're victorious, are not likely to run away from home again. On the contrary, they will advance into your dominions. If, on the other hand, the fight goes in your favor, the victory will be less decisive than it might have been had you crossed into their territory and followed it up by a pursuit of the beaten enemy. As you see, I balance what the Massaget will do by what I am sure you will do yourself, namely that in the event of victory you will drive straight against the kingdom of Tamiris, and apart from what I have already said, it would be surely an intolerable disgrace for Cyrus, son of Cambyses, to give ground before a woman. Here then is my advice. Cross the river, advance to the limit of the enemy's withdrawal, and then try to get the better of them by a piece of strategy. I have heard that these people have no experience of such luxuries as the Persians enjoy and know nothing about the pleasures of life. Let us take advantage of this fact and set out a banquet in our camp on the most generous scale, with a great many sheep slaughtered and dressed, all sorts of other dishes and bowls of strong wine in liberal quantities. Then, when the banquet is all prepared, let us march back to the river, leaving only a detachment of inferior troops behind us. Unless I am very much mistaken, when our enemies see all those good things laid out before them, they will set to work upon them, and that will be our chance to distinguish ourselves by a bold stroke. When Cyrus had heard these two conflicting opinions, he changed his mind in favor of Croesus, and he sent a message to Tamiris in the effect that she should withdraw her troops, as he intended to cross the river himself. This she did according to her previous offer, and Cyrus, putting Croesus under the protection of his son Cambyses, whom he had named as the successor, with many injunctions to treat him with kindness and respect should the expedition end in disaster, sent the two back home to Persia, and he himself crossed the river with his army. On the night after the crossing of the Araxes, when Cyrus was lying asleep in the country of the Massaget, he dreamed that he saw the eldest son of Hystaspes with a pair of wings on his shoulders. With one of them, he cast a shadow upon Asia, and with the other upon Europe. The eldest son of Hystaspes and grandson of Arsamis was Darius, a young man of about 20 at that time, who had been left behind in Persia as not yet old enough for the campaign. When Cyrus awoke, he thought over his dream and came to the conclusion that it was a serious matter. So he sent for Hystaspes and took him aside to speak to him alone. "Hystaspes," he said, "I have discovered that your son is plotting against me and my throne, and I will tell you the source of my information, which admits of no doubt whatsoever. When I was asleep last night, and the gods, remember, watch over me, and they always warn me of approaching danger, I saw your eldest son with a pair of wings on his shoulders, shadowing Asia with one of them and Europe with the other. One cannot possibly get away from the fact that this dream means that he is plotting against me. You, therefore, must at once return to Persia and see to it that you can produce the young man for examination when I come home victorious after this war." Though Cyrus was so sure of Darius' treachery, the real meaning of the dream was not as he supposed. Rather, the dream was sent by God to warn him of his death, then and there, and of the ultimate succession of Darius to the throne. Hystaspes, when he heard about the dream, said, "Heaven forbid, my lord, that any Persian should plot against you. If anyone does, may he die on the spot. Why, you found the Persian slaves and have made them free men. You found them subjects and have made them rulers. If a dream has told you that my son is planning treason, surely I will make you a present of him, and you may do with him as you please." And having given his answer, he crossed the Araxes and returned to Persia, to keep watch on his son Darius, in accordance with the orders of King Cyrus. Cyrus now advanced a day's march from the river, and he proceeded to do what Croesus had proposed. Then, leaving behind the feeblest portion of his men, he marched back again with the army he thus purged. A detachment of the Massaget, 1/3 of their entire force, fell upon the Persians who had been left behind and killed them all, in spite of their attempt to resist. Then, after this victory, they saw the splendid meal, all ready and laid out before them. At once they took their seats and began to regale themselves. They ate and drank so much that they went to sleep. This was the Persians' opportunity. They fell upon them, killed as many as they could, and took an even greater number of prisoners. amongst whom was Spargapises, the son of Tamiris, the queen and general of the army. When news of the defeat of her army and the capture of her son got through to the queen, she sent a message to Cyrus in the following terms. Glutton as you are for blood, you have no cause to be proud of this day's work, which has no smack of soldierly courage. Your weapon was the fruit of the vine, with which you filled yourselves till you were so mad that, as the liquor goes down, shameful words float up on the fumes of it. That is the poison you treacherously used to get my son into your clutches. Now listen to me, and I will advise you for your own good. Give me back my son and get out of my country with your forces intact, and be content with your triumph over a third part of the Massaget. If you refuse, then I swear by the sun, master over all of us, that I will give you more blood than you can ever drink, for all of your gluttony. To this threat, Cyrus paid not the least attention. The queen's son, when he was sober again and able to realize his position, begged Cyrus to have his fetters removed. The request was granted, and as soon as he had use of his hands, he killed himself. The queen, on hearing that Cyrus ignored her terms, engaged him in the field with all the forces she possessed. The battle which followed I judge to have been more violent than any other fought between foreign nations. According to the information given to me, the engagement began by the two armies coming to a halt within range of each other and exchanging shots with bows and arrows until their arrows were all used up, after which there was a long period of close fighting with spears and daggers. Neither side was willing to retreat. Finally, however, the Massaget got the upper hand. The greater part of the Persian army was destroyed where it stood, and Cyrus himself was cut down. Cyrus had been on the throne for 29 years. After the battle, Tamiris ordered a search to be made amongst the Persian dead for the body of Cyrus, and when it was found, she pushed his head into a skin which she had filled with human blood, and she cried out as she committed this outrage, "Though I have conquered you and I live, you have ruined me by treacherously taking my son. See now, I fulfill my threat to you, and you now have your fill of blood." And so ended the reign of Cyrus, King of Kings, Emperor of the greatest empire in the known world.
past, present, and future exists all at once.